Hey everyone, today we're going to be looking at this SunFire v240 from 2003. This is a 2U server unit in Sun's sort of entry-level server line. The V series of servers denote that it was sort of entry to mid-level, and they were trying to compete with x86 machines coming out at the time. This 240 and the 210 that came out at the same time, which was a 1U server, were Sun's attempt to sort of revamp their low to mid server offering. I would consider this sort of the spiritual, if not visual, successor to the V100 and V120. In fact, I've got a V120 right here that I've done a video on before. You can see, obviously, inspired by. The V120, however, is obviously not as long, and this one is their, I think maybe their first 2U offering in the V series. We'll do plenty of comparisons from the V120 to this V240 throughout the video, because it's sort of a frame of reference I have, having actually restored the V120 already. We're going to do a hardware overview, open the lid, take a look inside. I haven't turned it on. It's got a few hopefully easy to solve problems before we can do that. I think we're going to have some pretty good luck. These things are built really well. Pretty confident it's just going to fire right up once we take care of a few things. And then we'll get Solaris 10 jump started over the net onto a SCSI drive inside. Let's get into it. The SunFire V210 and V240, the one I have on the bench here, came out in May of 2003. What Sun called the small base configuration of the V240 came with one processor, one hard drive, and 512 megs of RAM. However, as we'll see when we open it up, what we have here today is what they called the large configuration. So 2 processors, 2 gigs of RAM, 2 hard drives, and 2 redundant power supplies. So this machine, as configured here, sitting on the bench, would have set you back in 2003 around $6,495. That's almost $11,000 here today in 2023. Again, these were a revamp of the existing level V series SunFire line with a new processor, the UltraSpark III. The UltraSpark III was codenamed Jalapeno, and this was a long-awaited processor known to the public, at least, according to an article from the Register back in 2001. There was some delay given that the V210 and V240 didn't come out with the UltraSpark III until 2 years later in May of 2003. And another Register article from 2003 kind of sums up one of Sun's biggest problems at the time, which was, since then, punters have gotten into the habit of buying Xeon boxes and installing Linux on them instead. But that's enough background. Let's take a look at these things. I've got the V120 sitting on top just for a physical difference reference. As you can see, it's quite a bit shorter than the V240 we're going to have a look at today. This V120 came out only 1 year before the V240. The V210 and the V240 here are kind of the successor to this V120 and its lower end counterpart, the V100. You can see the purple sort of changed. They changed colors a little bit. The faceplate style has changed. This is one little problem with this thing. I think we'll be able to get that off and have a better look at it later. This faceplate here is meant to come off and got really banged up during shipping. And you can see we have the 2 drive bays. This one, on the other hand, flips down, which is kind of cool. And you have 4 drive bays. So this would have been one of the big differences between this 240 and the 210. The 210 was only 1U, and it was only going to have 2 drive bays. The sleds being used are the same. So here's a sled from the 120. You can see it there. It'll slide in just fine to the 240. Click in, no problem. Another problem we're going to address today is I don't have nearly enough of these Sun sleds. This is stolen from an X220, which I'll also mention while we bring it up, is about the length of this guy here, and it came out 3 years later. So this 240 is about the length of any, mid-2000s ends up modern server. But yeah, I am starting to accumulate a lot of this Sun stuff, and I've only got like 3 of these trays. So that's a problem we're going to be solving later in this video. All right, back to the front of this thing. It's got some indicators here. I suspect this one you can probably turn on remotely and make it flash so you can find it in the rack. Of course, we have the nice SunFire V240 badge, a nice Sun, well, it used to be nice, Sun Microsystems badge here. We'll get that crap off when we start servicing this unit. It's got some old serial codes from the IT department that used to own it. And to that end, it's got this city serial code, some sort of serial inventory number. I believe this probably belonged to Citibank here in the United States. So important transactions flowing through this, I'm sure. We've got the opening here for the slim CD-ROM or DVD-ROM maybe. This whole thing comes down, which is pretty unique, I think. We've got the system configuration card. This card holds things like the MAC address and all sorts of other configuration about this physical unit. If this thing has a catastrophic failure, you would rack up a new identical unit, pull this card out, put it in the new one, and you'd be back up and running, theoretically. I've never tried it. I've also never seen one that had the factory zip tie cut, so for what it's worth. It used the normal, Sun drive trays like I showed you before. We could have 4 of them here in this 240. It's got a power on standby switch here. It also has this key switch assembly. So I unboxed this like several weeks ago. I vaguely remember maybe there was a key. I don't know where it is now, if I even have it. It looks like there's 3 positions. There's standby or normal operation, locked, and then on the bottom here, you can't see it, there's like a little chart for diagnostics. We'll dive into that and see what that is later. I don't even know if I have the key to turn it. Regardless, I think we're in normal position. We're not locked. I think it's really just to stop someone from turning it off once it's on. You would lock it in the on position so that someone didn't come along and accidentally turn it off or make a mistake. All right, and around back here, we've got 3 PCI slots. I do have the blanking plates. We'll see what those are up to when we open the lid. We've got an ultra high density SCSI connector, 2 USB ports. So we're in the modern era here compared to my other Sun. We've got 4 port NIC with 10, 100, and 1 gigabit support. So that kind of shows you the era we're dealing with here. Each of these can handle all 3 of those speeds. We've got a normal serial port, DB9 serial port, that goes straight to the OS. We've got a serial management port. This is for the ALOM, the Advanced Lights Off Management. We will definitely be using this. And here's another NIC for network management. So the ALOM over the network instead of over a direct serial connection. We'll probably use the serial. I'll try to use this one. I think it's only 10 megabit. I might not have anything that can support that, but we'll see. Here's the same status indicators that were on the front, but they're on the back now, obviously. And we've got 2 huge slots for the PSUs. So I do have them both. They're pretty big. As you can see, they've got super beefy connectors. There's one. And the reason they're out is, well, the seller was smart enough to take them out for shipping, and which I do think helped. He wrapped them separately. But this one has sustained some shipping damage. So we're gonna bend that back before we get these back in there. But I do have them. I have no reason to believe they don't work aside from that alignment pin that got bent. So let's take a look inside. All right, let's get to the part everyone's probably been waiting for. So we've got this big latch here with a Phillips screw. You do have to unscrew that, or at least I did. It's got these retaining clips on the side. They're marked V210 and V240. So the V210 must have shared the same cover, top cover as this 240 here, which is kind of interesting. Makes sense that Sun would do that. You pull this up, this half slides just like that. You've got a nice little instruction booklet over here, Velcroed, and it's a little pouch. It's like this nice plastic material. There's this air baffle fan shroud type deal. You kind of push it backwards and it pulls up just like that. And then you'll notice something's missing. Let me zoom you in. So yeah, this was a huge disappointment. These are not normal fans and heat sinks. These are not standard, obviously. I'll give you a closer look in a second. So basically I'm 0 for 2 on these V-Series SunFires. The V120 had an absolutely gnarled up mounting point for its heatsink, and I had to go buy a different one and get the latch in there, and yeah, that was a whole process in the other video. And now I open up this one and it's completely missing, which was a huge disappointment. So that's one of the problems we're going to be solving today. We'll discuss that in just a second. And then yeah, the usual stuff. So these are just floating around in here. We've got the 3 PCI blanking plates that should be back here because the retaining clip for them obviously fell off during transit. I've had a look around. I don't think they damaged anything, but that's just that's, you know, par for the course with shipping these massive servers from eBay. So basically, for the low price of a third of what I paid for this server in the first place, and the pleasure of waiting an additional 3 weeks, I have a replacement. Looks like it's a little different. It's got different writing. It's been used before, obviously. So yeah, we're gonna get this cleaned up. We'll get the chip cleaned up, and our first order of business to get this thing running will be to put this in. But to complete the tour here, got our 3 PCI slots. Pretty clever mechanism. These guys can slide back and forth depending on the length of your card. And I do have a very lengthy card that I'll show you at the end of this video that we do plan on putting in this thing. And of course, these pretty unique heat sinks, dual fan, and this one's missing, of course. There is our UltraSpark 3i. We'll pull this one off and redo the thermal compound when we do this one too, and make sure they're the same. Down in here we've got the DDR1 RAM, of course, and it looks like we've got 4 512 megabyte sticks for a total of 2 gigs, just like that default large configuration on the Sun website from 2003. 3 fans, they look real loud, so that'll be nice in here. And then of course, a cage for the PSUs. There's our instruction booklet. Flip this back over. And I believe what we do to get this off, we'll have a look, is there's some screws we take off here. All right, with the front bezel down, took out these 2 screws on the top front of the case. Get those out of the way. And I believe all right, I just couldn't do it one-handed. There's these little spots here for you to grip, and it slides forward. And then up and out. Look at that, more instructions. And in here, you can just access the system configuration card unit and then the drive array. I might be the first person that ever removed that panel since it's been put on, judging by the lack of witness marks on the screws. But anyway, that was finicky. Won't be doing that again. Let's get this thing open again, and we'll deal with our CPU fan issue. All right, let's get it unclipped. Let me show you what I'm doing here. Here's the other one. So you push down and pull like that to get these off. Let's try it. I haven't taken this one off yet, obviously. See what that's like. All right, got that one and that one. And now I don't know what to do. Okay, this one has, I think, a thermal pad because there's no compound in there, obviously. I think we'll put compound on. This is a good opportunity to get a nice look at that CPU print, though. Much more legible than the other one. All right, so nothing to do there. Let's get this guy cleaned up. All right, for comparison, here's the one that came with the machine on the left. It is Sun part number 3705126, whereas this one is Sun part number 3710984. However, they look equivalent, so I think we're going to be okay. We'll leave that thermal pad on there. I'll just put grease on in addition to it. We'll clean this up real quick with everyone's favorite, just isopropyl. I like to keep these little, I think they're salad dressing containers when you're like packing a lunch, but yeah, they work great for holding screws and IPA and stuff like that. I forgot to mention earlier, I wasn't necessarily deceived by the eBay seller. There were no pictures of the inside of the machine, and I felt that it was worth taking the risk for the price they wanted for it. It was a better price, best price I could find on eBay anyway, for one of these v240s. So Yeah, I took that risk knowingly and got a little burned because I had to go buy this relatively expensive heatsink replacement. All right, I'll get going on this and we'll be back. All right, it's not pretty, but it'll work just fine. And don't worry, we are sparing no expense for this SunFire. Got some nice Noctua thermal paste. Let's get that on both of those Ultra Sparks. Not the easiest heat sinks to deal with, but not the hardest either. Let's move on to that power supply. All right, as you recall, one of these alignment posts got bent, and my theory is that I can take just a screwdriver like this and bend it back. So let's give that a shot. My theory is holding true. Okay. I think that'll work fine. Might have to make some slight adjustments when we slide it in. Let's try that now. All right, so these have a latch, which I believe should be down when I slide it in. Let's try. Yeah, I think that was right. It kind of latched in there as I locked in there as I closed that. Moment of truth. Let's try my bent up one. I'm caught on this other latch. There we go. Oh yeah. I think we're in. No problem. Okay. 2 problems down. Our most critical repair of the evening. This stupid sticker. Sun even gave them a spot for here, a little badge here, but they still plastered it. So I'm going to start by trying Goo-Gone, Old Faithful, and then my hands will smell like it the rest of the night. Let that soak for a second. All right, it's like 30 seconds later. This stuff does tend to work better the longer you let it sit, but you can see that it's already breaking down. These stickers, that's great. It's just going to be a little bit of grudge work here with my fingernail, I think. We're liking what we're seeing. Let's hit it with Windex real quick to get that gunk off there. Check it out. Back to looking the way Sun intended it to. I tend to leave stickers like this on my old machines. I think they kind of tell a story about it. But that gunk on there was just ugly. So yeah, looks great. Let's look at those PCI blanks. All right, so the way this mechanism works, toolless basically. You slide that in there and you can still see there's a screw hole where my finger is covering it up. And then this guy comes in from the right and fills in those screw holes with these pegs. And then around back here, you've got this thumb screw, which came loose during shipping or was loose the whole time, I don't know, that secures this in place. So I'll get that back together. Much better. All right, now let's turn our attention to our final issue, which is the hard drives. So let's talk a little bit, like we do so often when we're dealing with this old enterprise equipment, about SCSI drives. So these early 2000s enterprise machines use SCSI drives, not IDE, not SATA. SATA and SAS weren't even out yet. SAS is actually the final iteration of SCSI, oddly enough. So they're a little harder to find. When you do find them on eBay, the prices kind of don't make sense for a 20-plus-year-old hard drive. And so a viewer named Nathan reached out and said, hey, I'll send you 6 SCSI drives for the cost of shipping. And I was like, Hell yeah. So our SCSI Drive sponsor is a viewer named Nathan. Thank you so much. He sent over 6 of these compact branded early 2000 SCSI drives. They're even still in their sleds. A couple of them are quite old. Check that out, from the year 2000. So that is super awesome. I've got 4 36 gig drives, an 18 gig and a 9 gig. I'll choose one of these 36 gig drives, and I think that's what we'll get in here today. And as you'll recall, I don't have enough of these Sun drive sleds. We've got a solution to that too. So here's what these Sun hard drive sleds look like. Basically a plastic rail on each side, sort of tapered so that it slides in to the slot. And then of course the locking mechanism on the front. This is one from the V120. Sometimes they have a bottom, sometimes they don't, depending on the machine and the state of the sled, I guess. So this is the original from the V120, that kind of sun gray purple color. This is from a machine a few years later, the X2200. Same exact form factor, just a different color and a different bottom. But yeah, if I was to fill every Sun machine I had with hard drives, I would need like 9 or 10 of these, and I only have 3. So I started looking online, and sure enough, there's a 3D print. So I got working on that. And as I was talking to Nathan, who donated these excellent compact drives, I realized he's the same guy that made the 3D print for the Sun sleds. And he recently made an improvement. So it's a friction fit, and it used to just be the 2 on the side. And now he's added this little handle that'll be there when we screw it on, and you can attach pliers or something to get them out when you're ready. So I think that's going to be really slick. So let's get this compact out of his old sled. This is obviously a compact branded one, which does us no good for the v240. And of course, compact uses weird Torx screws, T15 for those following along at home. So I'll get this out, and then I'll throw those other rails on, and I'll show you the finished product. All right, here it is. Got the handle on the front, rail on each side. The handle does kind of slide through. We'll have to keep it in position as we place it into the machine, but I think that's fine. Yeah, let's try it out. All right, let's try this out. Take the handle and slide that in there before I put it the rest of the way in. Yeah. Look at that. This is a huge, great option if you have some of the Sun equipment or you're thinking about buying it, because obviously in this case there were no trays. It's very often the case the trays are long gone. So I don't think I can pull directly on the handle, but it actually gives you a very good place to put pliers on either side. That is awesome. Yeah, that is fantastic. I will definitely be printing out more of these. I'll link to it in the description of the video. So with that, I think we've repaired everything. We're ready to fire this thing up and see if we get any life out of the LOM. All right, we're wired up. We've got one PSU hooked up, the network remote management, just in case I want to play with that. Got the ALOM serial port hooked up, and a network NIC. So serial console coming over this RJ45 to DB9 Cisco console cable into this guy. We've got a terminal open here with Minicom waiting. Let's see. It's kind of funny, you have to hold it off the edge of the bench so you can put this down to press the power. Let's give it power. Might do nothing. Ooh, it's alive. So what I can hear right now running is the PSU fan. The machine itself is not on. We'll let that do its thing. Drawing 14.5 watts at idle. All right, look at that. Advanced lights off management. Let's see what the password is. All right, so as I'm editing this video, I'm realizing I'm not explaining why I'm so obsessed with this ALOM thing. So all these SunFires and these Sun Enterprise systems came with what they called the lights out management. So In this newer line, it was the ALOM, Advanced Lights Off Management, just a newer version. And basically what this thing does is lets you control the server and configure various aspects of it, even when there's no OS installed, even when it's not powered on, over the net, and so on. So what I really want to do is I want to get into the Lights Out Manager so that I can tell it, hey, boot over the net with these parameters, or boot from the CD right now, that type of stuff. It just makes administering and installing Solaris so much easier if you have access to this thing. So that's what I'm agonizing over in the video here. Anyway, back to the show. All right, so here's the situation. The advanced Lights Out Manager, in the case of this v240, has a password set. Obviously, I don't know it. So there's some documentation online. You can get it to boot into Solaris, obviously, and reset it that way. I don't have an OS install on this drive, so that doesn't work for me. It said you can power the server down for a few seconds, power it back up, and smash the escape key to get into some sort of ALOM. Oh my god, it worked. Okay, so now we're in this special menu. Play Doom. What is that? I do not see what I wanted to see. I'll be back. Actually, we got to do Play Doom. What is that? Ooh. Easter egg. Let's try Reset SC, I guess. Nah, that's not going to work. Well, let's turn it on to see what happens. It's not that loud. I'm impressed. Yeah, I don't think ALOM is going to tell me much. Need to try to get it to boot. Alright, so a few problems. The ALOM password has been set on this, and obviously I don't know it. One way is you get into that special boot menu for the ALOM, but my version of the firmware here is too new. It doesn't have the erase NVRAM settings. Also, let's look at that Doom Easter egg again. That was pretty great. The other way is you get it to skip the ALOM and it'll eventually boot into Solaris and you can change it through the OS. Well, obviously I don't have Solaris installed on here. So I think there's going to be a way to do it. It's going to take me hours. I probably need to get a CD drive in this thing. If I had access to the ALOM, jump started over the net, done. Piece of cake. But you guys have seen me do that before. I won't subject you to me troubleshooting how to get this thing to boot a CD. But it's working fine. It powers up. The ALOM passes all its checks. Everything's looking good for this unit. That's basically what I wanted to find out. I'm sure I can figure out how to get Solaris on it, because there are some plans. This thing. It's not every day you get to see a box that has that branding on it. Let's open this up. This is a SunPCI III. Let's dig in here. Instructions, software. This is a USB and FireWire card. Why would we need all that? Well, here we go. This is a PC on a card that you put in your SunFire, and some Solaris software gives it a virtual hard drive, and you can install Windows XP on it. This one is brand new. I'll open it for the first time with you guys. It actually came with an anti-static wrist strap, but we don't need that. Fresh from the factory. Look at this thing. Basically, use the software over here, get that installed on your Solaris box, plug this in, this very long PCI card into one of the slots, and theoretically, you can get Windows running on it. So yeah, the ultimate goal behind buying this 240 is I know that this SunPCI III is compatible with this unit, which is awesome. So we will definitely be doing a deep dive getting this thing ready with Solaris and the software that came in this box. Get this SunPCI III installed. This is a absolutely cursed setup. A PC, an x86 PC running on a board inside your SunFire with Solaris controlling it. Like, the arrogance of man knows no bounds. So this thing's going to be great. Probably incredibly frustrating to get working, but I cannot wait to get Windows XP or something running on this card in this SunFire, which is running Solaris. It's going to be excellent. So in the meantime, hope you enjoyed that. Those 3D print rails for these SunFires are awesome, and a huge thanks to Nathan again for the SCSI drives. Those are going to fuel a ton more content when I'm working with these old servers, so much appreciated. And in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one.